prison cell is supposed to end a man's reach. These 5 proved it could stretch for years. 1 sent murder orders through coded notes. 1 used his wife and his lawyer to move money from the street. 1 ran a neighborhood from ADX Florence. 1 killed a federal officer, even though a life sentence was already waiting. And 1 gave a 2-word order from a safe house that left 3 men dead. These are 5 Mexican Mafia-linked killers who stayed dangerous behind bars. Before we get into this, drop a like and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Number 5. Jose "Joker" Gonzales. On May 13, 1992, in the driveway of a home on Lancaster Avenue in Boyle Heights, a 49-year-old woman was loading her van for a trip to Utah. She was going to her mother's funeral. She never made it out of the driveway. His name was Jose Gilbert Gonzales, known on the street and later inside the California prison system as Joker. He had been out of Folsom Prison for roughly 2 weeks when he walked up to that driveway in a stocking mask. Gonzales killed a woman who spent a decade keeping teenagers out of gangs, was caught running from the scene, and still managed to get a promotion out of it. Gonzales grew up in Boyle Heights as a member of Big Hazard, a gang headquartered in the Ramona Gardens housing projects. Big Hazard had been around since the 1940s, and it paid taxes to the Mexican Mafia, the prison organization that controlled drug dealing and street crime across much of Southern California. Gonzales was 29 years old when he walked out of Folsom in April of 1992. He had Big Hazard tattoos covering his body. He had done state prison time, which meant the Mexican Mafia was not dealing with a stranger when they came looking for him. The woman in that driveway was Ana Lizarraga, the gang lady to everyone in Ramona Gardens. She had grown up there as a gang member herself, watched her husband and 2 nephews die in gang-related violence, and spent the last decade counseling teenagers for community youth gang services, walking the streets of East Los Angeles unarmed and often alone. In 1991, she took a 4-month leave from that job to help director Edward James Olmos make American Me, a film depicting the founding of the Mexican Mafia inside Folsom Prison, including scenes of La Me's own leaders being humiliated and killed by their own members. The man who ordered the killing was David Gallardo, a Mexican Mafia figure who ran the East Side drug trade out of Ramona Gardens. Gallardo suspected Lizarraga was informing on him to police, and he blamed her for steering young men away from the drug business. Gallardo had already had 1 American Me consultant killed. In March of 1992, a fellow advisor named Charles Manriquez was shot dead at Ramona Gardens. A federal indictment would later allege that Gallardo ordered both murders. On the morning of May 13th, Ana Lizarraga's son, Manuel, 30 years old, was standing beside the van helping his mother load for the trip. 2 men in stocking masks walked up and opened fire from less than 10 feet away. Manuel watched his mother fall in the driveway in front of him. Officer Lira was driving a patrol car nearby when he heard the shots and pulled toward the scene. Gonzales and the second gunman turned their weapons on his car. Lira hit the floor of the vehicle and floored the gas to clear the line of fire, then circled back and caught Gonzales on foot. The second shooter was never identified. Police told reporters the killing appeared unconnected to Lizarraga's work on the film, though they knew from the start that both the victim and the suspect were tied to Big Hazard. In May of 1993, a Los Angeles jury convicted Gonzales of first-degree murder after 2 days of deliberations. Judge Michael Tynan sentenced him the following month to life without the possibility of parole. According to court records, Gonzales was officially inducted into the Mexican Mafia as a reward for the killing. He went in as a Hazard gang member on parole. He came out of trial as a made member of La M. 6 months after Gonzales was sentenced, his younger brother Ricardo, known as Rascal, was stabbed to death inside Ramona Gardens. December 5, 1993. Hazard members who had respected Ana Lizarraga did not forgive what Jose had done to her. Ana Lizarraga had spent 10 years as a gang counselor at Community Youth Gang Services before she was killed in her own driveway. His brother paid for that morning with his life. As of 2022, a former Mexican Mafia member testified in court that Gonzales remained one of the more influential figures in the organization, directing things from prison. Number 4. Manuel "Cricket" Jackson. On December 10, 2014, before sunrise in the Ramona Gardens housing complex in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles, residents woke to helicopters overhead. 800 federal agents and police officers moved in that morning. 25 people were arrested. 7 were already locked up. 1 had been shot and killed over the weekend. At the center was Manuel "Larry" Jackson. On the street and inside federal prison, he was Cricket. He was 51 years old, a Mexican Mafia member, and prosecutors said he had been running the Big Hazard gang in Boyle Heights from a prison cell. Cricket had already been in federal custody for years by then. He had been convicted of bank robbery, and inside a federal prison he had tried to kill another inmate. Those 2 convictions sent him to ADX Florence, the most restrictive prison in the federal system, located in Florence, Colorado, where inmates spend 23 hours a day inside a single concrete cell. From inside the Supermax, Cricket sent coded letters out to his gang. Big Hazard kept selling methamphetamine, PCP, crack, and heroin on its streets. It also charged other drug dealers working those streets a tax, and a cut of that money flowed back to Cricket in Colorado. But drugs were not the only business. Federal prosecutors said Big Hazard also used threats, assaults, and graffiti to push African American residents out of Ramona Gardens. The messages were not coded. Some of the tags simply said "No blacks." The pressure did not stop at walls. In May of 2014, members and associates of Big Hazard took part in a firebombing attack on apartments occupied by African American families inside Ramona Gardens. Windows were broken. Molotov cocktails were thrown inside. Prosecutors later said the purpose was to force the families out because of their race. The case against Cricket started by accident. A Big Hazard member named Mark Johnson crashed his car after a drug deal went bad on Interstate 10 near Los Angeles. When officers searched the wreck, they found Cricket's coded letters from ADX Florence inside. Agents soon learned Cricket was months away from getting out of ADX Florence. They started watching him. Cricket was released in June of 2011. A separate federal investigation then linked him to the Mexican Mafia's dealings with the La Familia cartel in Mexico, an operation that reached well beyond a single housing complex in Los Angeles. He was rearrested on federal methamphetamine charges. While Cricket sat in custody on the meth case, the older investigation kept moving. In December of 2014, prosecutors unsealed a 45-count indictment naming 38 defendants. The operation that brought 800 officers to Ramona Gardens that morning was called Operation Resident Evil. The indictment ran 110 pages. Prosecutors said Big Hazard had been selling drugs, collecting taxes, enforcing orders, and answering to Cricket while he was locked up in Colorado. It also described a gang that treated the housing complex like a controlled zone. Big Hazard used lookouts and CCTV surveillance around drug houses. Members filed bogus complaints against police officers, trying to get them moved out of the area. Residents who cooperated with law enforcement were threatened or assaulted. When agents swept the complex, ATF displayed more than a dozen seized guns. There were semi-automatic rifles, handguns, a .44 Magnum revolver, and one weapon built to disappear in plain sight, a gun disguised as a pen. In 2020, a jury in downtown Los Angeles convicted Cricket of possessing methamphetamine with intent to distribute. Cricket had already been in federal custody for nearly 6 years before that jury verdict. A judge sentenced him to 20 years. The racketeering case from 2014 stayed open while he served the meth sentence. In March of 2025, Cricket pleaded guilty to racketeering conspiracy and drug conspiracy. On July 7, 2025, a judge sentenced him to 10 more years to run at the same time as the 20 he was already serving. Cricket is 61 years old. Federal court records show he has nearly 20 prior criminal convictions, going back decades. The combined sentences from the 2020 and 2025 cases will keep him in federal custody well into the next decade. The December raid brought 800 officers into Ramona Gardens. The indictment named 38 people. The prosecution lasted more than 10 years. Cricket's orders had already traveled hundreds of miles before the helicopters arrived. Number 3. Frank "Puppet" Martinez. On March 4, 1999, FBI agents searching the Huntington Park home of Janie Garcia found $444,605 in cash. It was in storage boxes and a vacuum cleaner bag. On each bundle of bills, someone had written street names, collection amounts, and the names of the people who had brought the money in. While agents were still working through the apartment, the phone rang. It was Francisco Martinez, calling from federal prison. His name was Francisco Martinez. On the street and inside every California prison he passed through, he was known as Puppet. He had first come into federal custody in 1994 on an immigration violation. By the time agents were standing in his wife's apartment 5 years later, he was already running one of the most profitable drug operations in Los Angeles from a prison cell. Puppet started as a street boss of the Columbia Lil Sickos in the Westlake neighborhood of Los Angeles, an area west of downtown with a large Central American immigrant population and almost no police presence. In the early 1990s, while serving time in California State Prison, he was made into the Mexican Mafia. That gave him the right to tax every Latino gang operating in his territory. Through the 1990s, the Columbia Lil Sickos ran drug sales in the Westlake neighborhood around the clock, with dealers working in rotating shifts. The operation brought in roughly $250,000 a month. Puppet's personal cut was $40,000 a month, collected and delivered to him while he was already behind bars. Tax payments were sent regularly and on time. The Lil Sickos paid because they had no choice. That money moved through his wife, Janie Garcia, known to the organization as La Señora. Members delivered cash to her home in Huntington Park. She made the 12-hour drive to Pelican Bay State Prison, carrying coded messages rolled tight enough to hide in her mouth, and brought Puppet's orders back out the same way. Garcia made that drive regularly for most of the decade. At some point, Puppet became convinced that his lieutenant, Juan Romero, known as Termite, was talking to the FBI. He sent instructions ordering Romero killed. The letter told associates to fumigate the termite. The FBI intercepted it and recorded phone calls in which Puppet asked in code whether the termite had come back. Romero was shot multiple times and survived. He had not been working with the FBI. The FBI had been running a wiretap on the operation for months. Romero entered witness protection. On September 15, 2007, a street vendor in the Westlake area refused to pay the Lil Sickos $50 a week. He was shot 4 times and survived. The 3-week-old infant Luis Angel Silva in the stroller beside him did not. The shooter was one of the Lil Sickos' own members. He was lured to Mexico under the pretense he was being helped to flee and strangled. In 2003, attorney Isaac Guillen began visiting Puppet at the federal supermax in Florence, Colorado. Guillen used attorney-client privilege to pass orders between Puppet and the street. To launder the proceeds, he drove through gang-controlled neighborhoods collecting cash, bought run-down properties, fixed them up with gang money, and sold them through shell companies to produce clean income, over $1.3 million in total. At the time, a television network had purchased the rights to his life story. When Guillen was indicted in 2009, Puppet ordered him killed. Guillen cooperated within hours. In 2002, Martinez was convicted on federal racketeering, murder, and other charges, among the first such convictions ever obtained against a Los Angeles street gang. He received 3 concurrent life sentences plus 60 years. Federal prosecutor Bruce Reardon said he did not think you would find a more organized criminal enterprise anywhere, including on HBO with The Sopranos. Puppet is currently held at ADX Florence, the same facility that houses Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. In 2009, 7 years into his 3 life sentences and still directing operations from inside a federal supermax, 43 members of the Columbia Lil Sickos were indicted for running the same operation Puppet had built. Of the 43, 37 were convicted. Number 2. Jessie Chino Conway. On February 25, 2013, inside United States Penitentiary Canaan in Waymart, Pennsylvania, a federal correctional officer named Eric Williams was doing a solo patrol. One man watching over 130 high-security inmates in a housing unit. In 7 months, one of those inmates was set to finish his federal sentence and transfer directly to Arizona to serve a life sentence with no possibility of parole. Williams did not know that. The inmate did. The inmate was Jessie Conway. Inside the federal prison system and on the streets of Arizona, he was known as Chino. He was born in Manila, Philippines on January 17, 1977, came to the United States as a child, and was sent to adult prison in Arizona at 18. By his mid-20s, prosecutors said he was working as a gang assassin for the Mexican Mafia. Connie was 7 months from transfer to an Arizona life sentence when he made his decision. On August 25, 2002, in East Phoenix, Conway called Carlos Garcia, a gang member who had mentored him, and asked him to meet at a laundromat. Conway used that trust to set a trap. 2 men were waiting nearby. When Garcia arrived, they opened fire. Garcia was hit but ran. One shooter chased him down and put 4 more bullets in his head. Conway was convicted of first-degree murder in 2008 and sentenced to life with a minimum of 25 years. He was already serving 11 years for drug trafficking. Prosecutors also said he had been plotting to kill the detectives investigating him. By early 2013, Conway had a federal sentence nearly finished and an Arizona life sentence waiting. The standard tools for managing a dangerous prisoner had stopped working. In 2012 alone, he committed 2 serious violations at USP Canaan. Hearing officers ordered 6 months in solitary after each one. Both sanctions were suspended with no explanation. He was returned to general population each time. 2 days before the killing, Williams caught Conway smoking and told him he would run regular cell searches. The next day, he followed through. Clothing was on the floor, food was scattered, belongings were everywhere. Conway later told a prison psychologist he felt disrespected. He said he was sick of his people's disrespect. That evening, Conway armed himself with 2 sharpened plastic shanks and waited at the top of a stairwell for Williams to come up on his rounds. When Williams reached the stairs, Conway kicked him down the full flight and followed him to the bottom. Forensic testimony at trial established that Williams died within the first few minutes from stab wounds to his neck and chest. Conway continued for the remaining 8 minutes. He stopped to rinse a cut on his hand and tear off a strip of his shirt. Later, he searched Williams' pockets, found a piece of gum, unwrapped it, and put it in his mouth. More than 100 inmates were present. Not one intervened. When another officer found Conway standing over Williams' body, Conway said, "That fool disrespected me." Conway was convicted of first-degree murder of a federal officer in June 2017. The jury voted 11-1 for the death penalty. One juror refused to vote for death. She later said her own son was in prison and she could not bring herself to take another life. That one vote dropped the sentence to life without parole.
You know what they did to him for doing what he did to my boy? They did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. So I'm not happy. It's not right.
Justice wasn't done here today.
No, it was not.
Conway now sits at ADX Florence in Colorado, under special administrative measures, near total isolation, 23 hours a day, for the rest of his life. His Bureau of Prisons number is 04287-748. Don Williams has spent years pushing for a law called Eric's Law. Under current rules, when a jury cannot agree unanimously, the sentence drops to life automatically. Eric's Law would let prosecutors seat a second jury to decide the sentence instead. As of 2025, the bill had not passed. Number 1. Mariano Chuy Martinez. On November 19, 1998, inside an auto body shop in Montebello, California, a man named Richard Pee Wee Serrano was there because he owed money. A van pulled up outside. 2 men walked in with guns. His name was Mariano Menchaca Martinez, known on the street as Chuy. He was not at the shop. He was not in prison either. He was hiding in a safe house, running from an FBI manhunt, and he gave the order through a walkie-talkie relay. Serrano died a few minutes after the van pulled up. So did Jose Martin Gutierrez, a mechanic working that afternoon, and Enrique Del Godillo, who stopped by at the wrong time. The order Martinez gave was 2 words: clear the floor. Martinez was born on January 22, 1958, in East Los Angeles. He came up through Barrio Nuevo Estrada, a street gang out of the Estrada Courts housing projects, and became the shot caller for the Mexican Mafia, La M, across Los Angeles and Orange County. He controlled which drug dealers paid taxes, which ones got warnings, and which ones got killed. He did this while personally refusing to touch drugs. The man running one of the largest drug tax operations in Southern California did not use. At trial, Martinez walked in looking like someone's well-dressed father. The government said that same man had directed murders through relays, coded messages, and people who carried his orders from one location to another. Federal investigators documented more than 3,000 communications Martinez sent while evading capture. Coded messages, visits from associates, and a relay system built to keep his voice off any line the FBI could tap. The reason Martinez was hiding had to do with John Turskak, known as Stranger, a Mexican Mafia figure who was also secretly on the FBI payroll. In 1997, Turskak organized 2 gun attacks targeting Martinez at a car dealership. Both failed. After that, Martinez became more suspicious of the people around him, including his own lieutenant, Max Torvisco. The killings that followed, including Montebello, came out of that period. The target at the shop was Serrano, who had shorted senior Mexican Mafia members on money and drugs he owed. 3 men were sent. Marcel Arevalo, known as Psycho, drove the van. Gerardo Jacobo, known as Blanco, and Mario Castillo, known as Whisper, went inside with the guns. Before they fired, they contacted Martinez through the relay. The signal passed through a middleman and reached the safe house in seconds. He gave the order. They used 2 semi-automatic pistols in .380 caliber, 1 black, 1 chrome. Gutierrez and Del Godillo were witnesses. None of the 3 left the building. The guns were buried in a backyard in Pico Rivera. When one of the men was arrested in February of 1999, word went out to destroy them. They were dug up, taken apart, and thrown off a bridge over the San Gabriel River. Martinez was arrested in January of 1999 in Bell Gardens, California. A federal grand jury indicted him and 18 others on a 29-count RICO indictment. The government sought the death penalty based on 4 murders and 13 murder conspiracies, the first federal death penalty case tried in Los Angeles since 1950. The trial ran 18 months. The main witness was Torvisco, Martinez's former lieutenant. Torvisco told the jury he had participated in, ordered, or approved approximately 140 murders for the Mexican Mafia. The government gave him a reduced sentence in exchange. The jury convicted Martinez on all counts, then deadlocked on the death penalty. The federal government had asked a jury to execute a man connected to 4 murders. The witness they used admitted to 140. The jury noticed. On June 9, 2002, Judge David O. Carter sentenced Martinez to life without parole. The Supreme Court declined his appeal in 2005. In May of 2013, Judge Carter denied his final motion to overturn the conviction. Martinez died in custody on June 14, 2014, at the age of 56. People who had known him left messages calling him their godfather and mentor from the big house. Some had never known him outside of prison. The common mistake is thinking prison ends a gang's reach. In these cases, it did not. The orders kept moving. The money kept moving. The fear kept moving. A cell door stopped the body, not the influence. That is why these stories matter. Not because these men were powerful, but because younger people are still taught to mistake that kind of power for respect. Most of it ends in the same places: courtrooms, isolation units, life sentences, dead families, and neighborhoods left with damage long after the headlines disappear. If you know someone who needs to see what that life really costs, share this video. That is one of the clearest ways to tell YouTube this story should reach more people. And if you are watching on your phone and the hype button is available below the video, use it. It helps push the story toward new viewers, including someone who may still think the street gives more than it takes.